101 Dalmatians is often cited as one of Disney's best animated films, but despite its near-universal praise from critics and audiences alike, Walt Disney was extremely disappointed with the look of the film because it was a complete departure from all the other animated features he had produced up to this point. And I want to show you what made the film so different from its predecessors that caused it to be disliked by Disney himself. First, you might be wondering why Walt Disney would be disappointed with something that he helped create. Well, in 1957, when Walt read and bought the rights to Dodie Smith's novel that the movie was based on, he wasn't as involved with the animation department as he had been in the past, because at that point in time, his attention was split between producing live-action films, the weekly TV show Walt Disney Presents, and of course, overseeing his new pet project, Disneyland. Given Walt's love for storytelling, he still attended all of Dalmatian's story meetings, but beyond that, he wasn't as attentive to animation anymore, because of his other new ventures. What he was keenly aware of, though, was that the animation department was burning a hole in his pocket, because the studio's most recent films were expensive to make because of the intense amount of work required to produce them. Take a look at Sleeping Beauty, for example. It utilized the 255:1 aspect ratio, providing an unprecedented amount of surface area that the artists had to fill. And it also didn't help that this film was one of the most detailed, hand-drawn animated features that Disney had ever produced. Take the scene where Aurora is crying in her bedroom, and you'll see the detail I'm talking about. The background has tapestries that look hand-woven and stitched. The way the chandelier and candelabra are painted suggests that they're made of different metals. And every stone on the wall was uniquely painted to make them all look different. It took a team of over 600 artists to create Sleeping Beauty, but when the film failed to make a profit on its $6 million budget, the animation department went through massive layoffs, leaving 101 Dalmatians with only half the artists the studio once had. And there was a desperate need to cut costs and make a profit, or the whole animation division would be shut down. No pressure now. So in addition to Walt's other worries, during Sleeping Beauty's production, he then had to contemplate shutting down his entire animation department because by his own admission, it all had become too expensive. But Iwerks came to the rescue, who was Disney's first creative partner and the one responsible for the multiplane camera. And he came up with the idea to save money by using a new Xerox process, where the animator's original sketches could be photocopied directly onto the cells. The animation department tested the xerography process twice on smaller projects. Their first test was with the thorn forest in Sleeping Beauty, and for the second test, they went a step further to use the technology to create a 15-minute short film, Goliath 2. The look of Goliath 2 showed the animation team that pivoting in this direction would cut the needed costs, while also maintaining the emotional capability in the animations. Xerography also came with the added bonus that the animator's original artwork would be more visible since the ink and paint division would no longer need to trace over their drawings. But this also meant that the ink and paint department would no longer be needed, so the whole division was shut down. Disney put Ken Anderson in charge of Dalmatian's art direction, who had directed the artwork for Snow White and Pinocchio, and Anderson eventually pitched the idea to Disney to create Dalmatians using xerography. And Walt, being busy overseeing the other areas of his company, told him, "You can fool around all you want to," which is a decision he would later regret, because in the end, Disney became deeply disappointed with Dalmatian's scratchy look, which was a complete departure from the romantic charm he loved about all the previous films. But to Anderson's credit, making Dalmatians would never have been possible without xerography, because they now had the time to add a unique feature to the characters, which was all the Dalmatian spots. This was such a monumental task that an entire team of animators was assigned just to draw the spots on the dogs' bodies, and perhaps Roger's too for that matter. Each dog reportedly has exactly 32 unique spots, drawn in clusters like constellations, in order to create a distinct pattern. Lucky, for example, you'll notice has spots on his back in the shape of a horseshoe. But what is truly remarkable is that the spots aren't perfect circles and vary in size, and the animators had to place them with 100% accuracy on each frame, because if they didn't, the spots would slide around on the dog and break the immersion of the story. Sources say that if you stop to count each spot in every frame of the movie, the total would come to 6,469,952 spots. That's a lot of work. And remember, it was all done by hand. It's also worth mentioning that the xerography process led the animators to innovate how they could create the car sequences, using 3D models but without any computers. To do this, they created a cardboard model of a car with the lines drawn on it. Then they filmed the car doing the actions they needed, and then used xerography to transfer the images to the animation cells. So what you see in the movie is a blending of 3D modeling and hand-drawn animation without the use of computers. It seemed that Disney's relationship with Ken Anderson had turned sour after 101 Dalmatians' release, because Walt said he didn't want to see another film made like that again, and that Anderson would never be an art director again. But 5 years after the film's release, Walt visited the animation studio to make amends with Anderson for what he had said, which made Anderson feel a lot better to have Disney's approval. And that was the last time they ever saw each other, because a couple of weeks later, Walt died. So even though 101 Dalmatians may not be as beautiful as Disney's earlier films, it makes up for it with a memorable villain, a unique modern story filled with suspense and mystery, and a look that now many people would never want to change. Click the video on the screen for more facts about other Disney movies, right here on Fun Fact Films.